Hassan is the financial director and a board member of the group. You're welcome, Fatma. And also I have other members. I have Miss Mata. Miss Mata, you're welcome. Miss Mata is also a member and the secretary general of the group. You're welcome, Miss Mata. And also finally, I have Mr. Ralph. Mr. Ralph is also a member of the board of trustees of the organization. You're welcome, Mr. Ralph. And I have with me here in the studio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have with me in the studio Mr. Chris. Mr. Chris is a writer and a development enthusiast. You're welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah. Okay. So now, please, I'll come to you directly, Mr. Sixtus. And now, what is the whole essence of your group? Can you tell us about your group?
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ebuka. Well, MPAPV Africa simply stands for Movement for the Propagation of African-Made Products and Values. So our vision is just to see Africa have a self-sufficiency through some of the presbyterial approaches where the MPAPV African team have decided to put in place. And those presbyterial inputs that we are considering that it will help Africa to have its self-sufficiency is for Africa to look outside the box, to think about patronizing their own locally built products and services. So with the MPAPV Africa, we decided that for us to achieve this African self-sufficiency, we need to sensitize our image makers, that happens to be our African leaders, for them to hearken into this particular movement. But since they are the image makers of Africa, they have that responsibility to showcase African cultures and values, and those things that we Africans are proud of back home. We also need to let them understand that as image makers of Africa, while they are engaging with other international communities, they're supposed to showcase those our qualities and potentials that we have as Africans, and not to always to give the impression that we are always a dependent continent. This is what the MPAPV Africa stands for, and we believe when this particular awareness is widely spread among African leaders, and they begin to think about developing some economic policies that will help Africa come out of this poverty and insufficiencies. Africa will smile again, and we will have a very poor, very lessened poverty and difficulties that have really, engulfed Africa as a continent.
All right. So now let's hear from you, Fatma. When you are looking at your organization and respect to Africa and the very condition of the extent to which the continent is largely underdeveloped, what comes to your mind? I mean, what for you is the motivation behind your group's effort towards Africa's development?
Well, in my perspective, as an African, I feel like promoting my country is a great way to beautify it, to increase its awareness, to allow people to understand that it's not a type of a poor country as a lot of people would actually assume. So I think this movement would be better, is a way to encourage people, to allow them to understand that Africa has more than what people assume. It has many riches, and I think we need to actually promote that and encourage people to understand that Africa is rich and can do 1,000 times better than what people actually think of it.
All right. So all right. So now I'll come back to you on that. But let me hear from Mata. Mata. And now, your group, is committed to reawakening the consciousness of Africans. Trying to get Africa to Africans to develop Africa. Now, what for you is the most important thing, that Africans, should do to develop Africa?
Oh yes. As this organization is an international organization that advocates the African self-sufficient, like we are self-sufficient, and this particular organization is here to stress the need to stimulate economic growth, because economic growth contributes a lot towards expanding internal market in Africa and also to the rest of the world. So South Africa is here to fully empower Africa in all spheres, to make people have the right to sell their products freely, have the right to market their products freely, and be actually even supported by Africans themselves. So like our mission statement says, we want we want leaders or the ones in position to take responsibility, in what we are doing, and encourage people because they are the ones in high positions. We will have to encourage people to market our own products, and this will showcase our own true values and culture, norms, and everything through our global, to the global community, Yeah, that's what I
All right, so now let me hear from you, Ralph. Now the demand or the expectation, by Africans for Africa's development has been on for hundreds of years. Different Pan-African groups, over time, come together and try to advocate that Africans, should do better, should show much more commitment towards Africa's development. Now, what different is your group bringing to the table? What new conversation is your group making? How is your group different from some of these other advocates in the past?
Thank you, Mr. Ebuka, for the chance. First of all, just like my other colleagues have mentioned, it is one thing to be born in Africa and bred in homeland, and it's another thing to have experience in another foreign country, probably out of Africa. And so most of us got to interact out of Africa, and we realized that we have a lot of energy when it comes to our identity and also strength in our diversity. So we looked back at home and realized that we have a number of challenges that we can address together. And one of them is propagating our strengths, propagating and advancing our goods and values. And so we realized that we can come together in diversity, just as you mentioned that Africa is diverse. And we use that strength in diversity to advance our vision. Thank you.
All right. Now, so I would like to hear from my guest here in the studio, Mr. Shima, who is equally, very much, a very much informed, man in terms of advocacy for Africa's development. Now, Mr. Shima, what in your view do you consider the biggest, roadblock to Africa's development?
Well, it's a combination of several contributors, but if you ask me to pick and choose which of them I consider to be the most impediment, you're putting me on the spot, but I might say that I consider the victim mentality as partly, maybe largely the greatest contributor. We are not victims to any circumstance. Africans are more human, are no less human than the others. And so the view, for instance, when you go to the development world, is that a lot of players there, and I'm grateful for this wonderful body who is doing such a nice job, because a lot of times you see that it appears as if outsiders are more interested in our development. For instance, if you go to development workers, if you see the foreign aid coming in, And if you see those NGOs working on development, whether they be health, whether they be education, whether they be water, whether they be all aspects of, you see that most of them are from outside in. So I am of the view that Africa's development will come from Africa and not from without, right? So our overdependence on foreign aids, dependence on donor monies, dependence on donor funds and donor expertise, and over-reliance on foreign or in some cases imported ideas, especially governance ideas, structural ideas. Those are things I think are working against Africa. We have to start having homegrown solutions to our problems, and I'm grateful that this body is working on homegrown approach to find a way for us to buy made in Africa goods and all of those things as a way to ignite that revolution we've always wanted to happen. It won't come from outside, it will come from inside.
All right, now, but what other options do we have? If we say we want to do away with all the foreign expatriates, want to do away with foreign aid, what alternatives can we? What do alternatives available to us? Are they sustainable?
I have not advocated for doing away with foreign aids. For instance, when Buhari started his import substitution policy, let me pick and choose one. Maybe rice, for instance. When they started the import substitution policy on rice, I said, well, import substitution is very good on rice. I'm talking about Nigeria now. So you want us to have self-sufficiency in rice, say in 2022. So you don't just chase away people, you just don't lock your borders. You ask yourself, who are the biggest players in rice? What are they doing? For instance, I know that Thailand is one of the biggest players in rice. What are they doing? They get cheaper funds. You borrow money here, you get it at you can't find single-digit interest loans here. You borrow money at double digits, whereas a Chinese or Taiwanese farmer borrows money at single digits. Then they have the technology, which is talking about the rice processing mills and all of those things. Then you have the ecosystem around it, which means that the mills break down, that you can find engineers in your local community. If a mill, for instance, breaks down in Nigeria, you have to import foreign expatriates to come and fix those mills. Then you talk about electricity. Then you talk about access to market. There are some ways, from the rice farm to the processing factory, there are no motorable roads. So these are the impediments. When you begin to study those impediments, you address electricity, address access to financing, you address having an ecosystem that supports whatever business. So those things are not things you can achieve with banning of importation or restricting forex. So these switch from outside in to inside out will come from a policy that is well thought of and carefully implemented. Not just saying, oh, to your tent, oh, foreigners. No, we can't do that. But we have to start a process. It could get in form of education. We have to tweak our school curricula. For instance, we keep churning out engineers every year, mechanical engineers, they call them, but they can't fix anything mechanical. So we need to have a whole lot of discussions on that. And it's a developmental policy. It doesn't happen by accident. It must come from careful planning and methodological implementation. Anything outside of that, for instance, the rice policy I talked to you about is poorly designed and poorly implemented. So those are not the kind of ideas I'm looking at. I'm looking at a comprehensive approach to issues.
Wow. Okay. Now I would like to hear from you. Fatma, you were saying something. The other time you mentioned something around the region of trying to to create a consciousness and getting Africans to to really form synergy and work together towards achieving the goal, which is development for Africa. Now, in what specific ways do you think Africans can work together to develop the African economy? Because you have to also bear in mind that when you are looking at Africa from the point of view of a single continent, you could be making the mistake that most Western solutions do. They see Africa from the point of view of a single indivisible continent, assuming that we are all just one and the same. And so I would like you to to really have a very deep look at this and suggest possible ways that different African peoples or African countries can actually synergize, work together towards achieving our self reliance economically and sustenance.
Well, it's all about, as Mr. Rauf had mentioned, it's all about diversity. It's all about different countries in Africa coming together, sharing different types of talents, offering different types of talents, different types of like creativities, and just coming together and working together. I mean, the country is full of rich and wealth, so in its own way, and the people are very knowledgeable. And instead of sharing their crafts or their knowledge outside of Africa, why not just stay inside the country and improve the country and allow it to grow?
Yes, so but now, do you think that there are some, certain structural problems that we have in Africa here, that do prevent people from actually living to their full potential, and that's why people essentially try to go out elsewhere and look for things to do. I mean, what is the organization doing to make the environment at home friendly so that people can stay and grow well?
I believe that would be awareness of what people can do together to improve the country.
All right, so
I think Mr. Sixtus can actually.
Yes. Let me hear your view on that, Mr. Sixtus.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ebuka. Actually, when we talk about Africa, like you rightly said, so many people, especially in the developed nation, they used to think that Africa is just a country. They used to look at it like just a dot, in the world map. But most people hardly just believe that there are actually some viable areas in Africa that are doing well. But be that as it may, I also want to bring to our notice that Africa has what it takes to feed the whole world. That is, if Africans can deploy the best machineries in harnessing the economic potentials Africa has. For instance, Africa is just a continent that is made up of countries that have small domestic markets, limited economic diversification, and generally poor connectivity with neighboring countries. And I think this is where we have a sort of a challenge when it comes to movements of trades among neighboring African countries. And what could also, lead to this challenge could be due to the kind of economic policies some Africans, using in their own countries. When the economic policy of a particular country does not really support, global integration of economy and goods from other neighboring African countries, then we find it difficult for us to have this exchange. And when we have a viable market, where we have a proper connectivity channel amongst neighboring African countries, it will increase the rate of flow of goods and services, and inadvertently also increase the flow of cash within the hinterland of Africa. And when we have an effective and efficient flow of goods and services, that will invariably increase the rate of flow of cash within African country. It will reduce, the scarcity of certain basic, infrastructural development and some certain basic, human needs within the hinterland that has, have increased, hunger and poverty that has been, plowing the minds of African descents today. So I believe that if Africans can come up with some economic policies that will enable, global integration of goods and services, amongst the African markets, we will have a very viable system that will help to improve on our, economic diversification. It will also help to improve some of the innate abilities we have, because most of the Africans that have so many great talents, they find it difficult also to harness those talents because they do not have a good level ground for them to, express themselves and harness what they have. But if Africans can come up with some, friendly economic policies that will allow businesses to thrive, by reducing taxation on locally made products and services, improving and encouraging local production, you will realize that we will get to that point where we'll have a very self-sufficiency, because at the hinterland, when we have a reduced hunger, that means we are approaching self-sufficiency. So let Africans look towards, general connectivity with the neighboring countries. When we have this, it will reduce proximity between economic agents within Africa and between Africa and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Okay, now let me hear from you, Ralph. Yes, how or in what specific ways do you think young Africans, should work together towards actualizing this development? Ralph, please.
We have a number of challenges facing Africa as a continent, and also if you go deeper into the individual countries, they have unique challenges that need to be looked at. And we are saying that if we come together and we have a common goal of advancing the general interests of Africa, then this will trickle down to benefit all Africans. And we are saying that one of the barriers that we have is in the policies. We have stringent policies amongst ourselves as African states that hamper trade amongst ourselves. And when we have these stringent policies, then we are opening doors for other trade players to access our market and compete with us. So we're saying if we want to benefit our people, let us look at the challenges that make trade amongst ourselves difficult, and we ease them. Now, through this, when our people are empowered, their lives are definitely improved. And as it is now, Africa has a population of about 1.2 billion people. A good percentage of the young people are unemployed or definitely not engaged in any worthy economic activity. If we want to address this challenge, then we need to look at ways of engaging our people. If it is going to improve their skills through training, we will need to go through that route. If it is going to engage our young people in sectors that generate income, if it is agriculture, we need to look at better ways of improving agricultural output and turning that into economic gain to our people. If it is education, then we need to look at education that is beneficial. We don't look at those courses that are not in tandem with the current world. We look at the courses and definitely grow first Africa. If it is the technological advancement, then we need to look at how we are going to plug ourselves into the global digital arena, and then we compete with the world. And many young people are embracing digital technology right now.
All right, now let's hear from you, Mata. Yes, Mata. Can you hear me?
Talk about trade. But I know, yeah, I can hear you.
All right, please go ahead.
Yes, as we all know, trade is a key driver of growth in Africa, mostly. So what we really think as this movement, we think that when African countries trade within themselves, if the consumer supports what the other seller is selling, and the consumer is, an internal consumer like African, I mean, this will help us exchange a lot of more products and information among us. And apart from just this, it also helps us to exchange more knowledge. We gain from each other when we consume our own products and also, sell our own products. So I believe this creates more value of everything. So also about the policy makers, we would want to urge, just like our core values, we are goal-oriented, and we want to urge our policymakers to focus on economic transformation currently. and we're just here to sensitize. Much as we are here to sensitize, we expect people or Africans or policymakers to back up this and help us on this initiative. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Right there. Now 6 to that means your group you are ready to engage in a lot of interaction and conversation with the leadership of different African countries to ensure that some of the
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you intend to go about that?
All right. Thank you so much. Actually, we intend to have this awareness drive, an explosive one, in a situation whereby we will extend our awareness, to the Nigerian embassies. For instance, we are residents here in Qatar. Most of the African countries, their governments are heavily represented by the presence of their embassies. And through their ambassadors, we will extend our awareness to the African leaders that are here represented. And through that way, we believe that when they get our awareness intervention, they will be able to say, okay, look at this group, can we understand what are your plans, what is your vision, and what you intend to achieve? And we will be able to explain to them how we intend to achieve self-sufficiency for Africa. If only our image makers can hack into this our particular policy by promoting made in African goods and services. If we can achieve promoting, that is making a priority policy for African made products and values to be propagated and consumed by Africans, and also looking for a way to have this economic policy integration where African countries can have a very friendly and viable economic policy that will allow free flow of trade amongst African countries. So if our leaders can get this particular awareness that there is a need for them to have the policies, look into their economic policies to enable interconnectivity within African neighboring countries for them to have a free flow of trades and services. It will help to improve, the economy of Africa, and also help to restore the sufficiency that we have been talking about.
All right, thank you so much. Now let's hear from Mr. Chima here. Now, what do you think about the process or the problem, the challenge of getting young Africans working together to achieving certain economic goals?
Well, identity is a very important thing to Africa. Not just Africans, to all of us as human beings, identity is very important. And then when you talk about economic opportunities, you can't discuss that in a vacuum. And for instance, I look at Africa today, and you look at the greatest contributors, or what you call the greatest stressors to peace and security, it's about identity. Whether you're talking about Cameroon, whether you're talking about Sudan, South Sudan, whether you are talking about the ongoing crisis in Ethiopia today between the Tigray region and all of those other regions, whether you're talking about the insecurity in Nigeria, it has a lot to do with identity. During the last interview of President Muhammad Buhari, when he was asked about why he was prioritizing a rail project from either, I think, from one part of Nigeria to Niger, right? So he made mention of something that people have been saying. He said, and I quote, that people sat down and then in their offices or in the conference room drew a map and said this is this and that is that. For instance, in Northern, an average Northerner feels more, I won't say beholden, but he feels more at home dealing with a Nigerian than dealing with a Southeasterner. An average Southeasterner feels more comfortable with dealing with a Southern Cameroonian than dealing with the average North. So you begin to see that some of the political divides or some of the boundary lines that were drawn before, that people's affinity tend to be within some form of ethnicity, some form of mutual, or what do I say?
Kinship.
Yes, kinship. So for instance, you see that there are people from Cameroon, northern Cameroon, that deal better with people from Adamawa State than people from Adamawa State deal with people, for instance, in Kwara or in the southeast. So a lot of the conflicts you see around Africa are based off that strength of identity politics. And if we don't find a way to restructure, not just Nigeria, but Africa, that people begin to find ways to articulately and intelligently respect what it is that are our proclivities, respect what it is based identity-based politics, and because there are a lot of good projects. For instance, we have discussed the importance of ports, decongesting the Apapa and the Tinkan seaports. We know that there could be viable seaports down south, but because of identity politics and because of the history we have had with the Civil War, talking about the dot in a circle and all of those things, there has been issues. So we know that this is a bad economic policy, but because of that strong allegiance to identity, and then you see, and then sometimes we keep voting leaders. We know these are terrible leaders, but we sustain them in office to keep executing terrible policies because of identity. So identity is a very important factor for Africans. So we need to have a whole lot of conversation about identity, about how we can restructure, about these things before we can begin, because sensible people implement sensible programs and policies. Unfortunately, if you don't have sensible people in government, it is difficult. You can do all your telephone analysis, you can do all your academic work, it won't be implemented. So we need to find a way. For instance, I keep worrying. I read today about 350,000 additional people became sort of displaced by the conflict ongoing in Ethiopia, and it's worrisome that Ethiopia was at some point one of the fastest growing economies in Africa.
Even the president got an award.
Yes, a peace so
prize.
look at what this war will do to the economies. Look at what it will do, and not just anything that happens in that Ethiopia happens in the whole of Horn of Africa. And then look at the current crisis we're having in Nigeria today. I'm sure you must have had the breaking news of the saturation of Nnamdi Kanu. Look at what it will do to Nigeria. If anything happens, for instance, to Nigeria, it will affect the whole of West Africa. Even the internal crisis we are having today affects all of these things we are talking about: opportunities for young people, industrialization, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's so. I think that Africans need to say that that map that was drawn before may have to be renegotiated and redrawn.
Well, now back to you, Sixtus. Before we wrap it up, do you think that economic development necessarily requires a political partnership, or whatever, however you would wish to define this political partnership? But do you think that the politics, the type of politics we play in Africa, we need to redefine the African politics to be able to to energize the African economy?
Exactly. Thank you so much for that question. Actually, the politics we play in Africa is more of a neo-colonial politics, where certain people are still hiding under the leadership of African leaders, to further plunder Africa. And it is because of those agents of neo-colonialism that are behind African leaders that are really shortchanging the terms when it comes to economic policies. Now, African leaders are supposed to think beyond their pocket and their family. If African leaders can stop thinking beyond their family and their extended family and generation, and think on a global scale about African emancipation in terms of food scarcity, poverty, and all those stuff, then they will first of all play some politics that will enable them come up with some policies, because those that are providing the politics in African countries are our political leaders. Now, those political leaders who do not have the interest of Africans towards African emancipation, they do not really care about the policy they are providing. And when you have a very unfriendly economic policy, it drives away investors. It's also hamper, internal economic development and diversification of goods and services. These economic policies that are being, developed by our leaders through the machinations of the neo-colonial masters that are still hiding under them are actually the major challenges that we are having when it comes to economic policy in Africa. So my point here is the politics and the kind of people we have in power are actually the ones that are hampering that economic, development in Africa. So African leaders need to come off it and think about those policies for Africans alone, and not about the policies that they will put the interest of the colonial master, or rather the neo-colonial masters who have a stake in whatever that is coming from African soil. Take, for instance, in Nigeria. Nigeria's major economic revenue is oil, and the oil generation of production in Nigeria, the British, the American, and some other sharks in the oil and gas sector are somehow interested in what we produce in Nigeria. Then the policies that they are going to make will also consider the stakes, the interest of these giants who are also making us dry. So Africans are supposed to think beyond that level, and for us to go back to the drawing board to think about the policies that can actually help Africa as a whole to come out of this poverty and hunger that has been plowing Africa as a continent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, my brother. Now let me have your last word on this conversation, Fatma. Yeah, Fatma, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, please.
Can
Now,
you please repeat your question?
yes, I said, let me have your last word. What do you have to tell, African youths, African leaders, African, economic players? Just what's the last word on this?
Well, I would like to say that as magnificent as the country Africa is, it has beautiful, massive economic disposal of human capacity as well as the natural soil of what the earth brings, the country brings, the continent brings. And the idea is, what I'd like to say is to have these, have the leaders, the economic leaders, hear us and listen to us and try to have an open mind about this movement and give us a chance, and let's see how it works.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Mata.
Okay, my last words would be like, while the benefits of competitive laws are, they are clearly observable right now, there's still a lot of efforts that are required to ensure effective implementation of competitive laws. So all these laws and policies across the continent should be still, effective. But the favor should be on the African products, and that's exactly why we are here. And we need to be elevated, we need to be supported, we need people to come up, the youth, come and, join us, join the team, join South Africa, and let's fight for African products to be out there. Yeah. This is the only way we may improve on economic growth.
Thank you. Now, Ralph.
Yes.
Yes, before you go on, I would like you to just say a word or two regards the reportage on Africa, generally by mainstream media. I mean, you see constant, image of poverty, of war, out of Africa, being on display on mainstream media, what comes to your mind? And so while you're putting out your last word on the conversation for this evening, I would like you to just have a very sharp overview on that incident.
Thank you. Our general view is that nations that trade together love each other, and then there will be minimal chances of engaging in war that will definitely kill or maim people. So we want to champion this agenda as a way of minimizing conflict, and we have more things to love each other as Africans about. And as you mentioned, in countries where we have had conflict, war, and all that, definitely it sends a negative image about the whole of Africa, not just, if there's war in one particular nation, the message that is always sent out there is that Africa is in conflict. And definitely this affects all of us, that we are balkanized and put in one basket as people who love war. And we are saying that there are more things that we can do together other than those negative messages being sent out there. And so my message this evening to all Africans, all Pan-Africanists, is that let us put our energy in areas where we can grow together and also match the other parts of the nation. We have Europe, not because there were no other countries before, but they are still using one common voice in Europe, and they have a strong currency called the euro. We have America, not that they did not have other countries before, but they are stronger because they are America and they have the dollar. And we as Africans can also do it. We're saying let us push our governments to come up with policies that favor the people, favor trade amongst ourselves, and give our products weight across the globe. And finally, we recognize also the presence of other global organizations. In Africa, we have the African Union. They are playing a very critical role in trying to bring together African states. We have other United Nations agencies who also have various roles that ensure there's fairness in trade. But as Africans, we are saying we need more space of our natural resources. We need more space of our hard-earned labor. We need more space of our products that we generate with our hands. And that will definitely trickle down to our mothers and our grandfathers, our fathers and brothers in Africa. And our lives will definitely change for the better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. Sixtus, Ralph, Mata, Fatma. It's a pleasure having you guys. Thank you so much. And also I also like to thank my guest in the house here for joining in your conversation. I have a guest here, a writer and also an advocate for Africa's emancipation and an economic development enthusiast. The person of Chima. Chima is here in the studio with me. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ebuka.
Yeah, Sixtus, you're welcome. So that's our show for today on African Conversation. The montage, abi? follows the same sequence like the controversy that's been trailing the All Progressives Grand Alliance, the ruling political party in Anambra State, regards to the primary election that produced Professor Chukwuma Soludo as the candidate of the party. And also today, we have been informed that APGA, another faction of the APGA, has also produced another candidate for the election that is coming up in November 6th, 2020. And so essentially, we have now for APGA about 2 candidates, PDP 2 candidates, and the APC 1 candidate. So what does this say about the coming governorship election? So we'll find out. And now we have with me in the studio Mr. Chima. Mr. Chima is an journalist, he's a writer, and he's here with me in the studio. Chima, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So now we're looking at the primary election that has been so far conducted by the especially major political parties in Anambra State. You see APGA, you see the crisis in APGA even up to today. Today we heard that another candidate has emerged, from a different primary, conducted by a factional chairman of APGA. All right. So, and also in the PDP we have similar, situation, and in the APC we have a situation where leaders of the party and other aspirants said there was no election, but we have a candidate. So now, what's your take on the confusion and the struggle, the tussle that has become characteristic of our system?
Well, when you talk about the process, it has not been quite smooth in almost all the 3 major political parties. The only place you have a semblance of peace and in a party considered major, although the major is not 3 major, it's top 4, is YPP, who has, I think, a sole candidate, and we didn't have all this noise about their primaries. Outside of that, you saw it in APC, you saw it in PDP, you also saw it in APGA. What it tells you is that you could look at it either ways. You could say, oh, democracy is regressing. Or the way I look at it, especially in one of the political parties that I have friends in, and I am, is that I'm seeing the death of leadership in this. You see, Africa is coming from a place of sole leadership, where you had kings, you had kingdoms, you had Igwes, you had Obis, you had people who sit in authority and say things, and the rest have to fall in line. Today, we are now in participatory democracy, where power is shared, right? For instance, if you look at APGA, the way it worked in APGA is that it was a one-party state, right? Where the body language of the governor dictates what every other person does, right? And then you had people who were former players in APGA, for instance, P2B, who is now in PDP. He was in a party where he was the single dominant player. Now he is in a party where he has to share power with other power brokers. Now you now begin to see that the absence of critical leadership skills is what is troubling these political parties, because power is shared. And if you don't know how to negotiate, if you don't know how to offer deals, if you don't know how to make everybody come together to the table to agree on issues, what is your interest? What is your interest? How can we harmonize this interest? When you have people who don't have that skills of having disagreement and still talk through those disagreements, you begin to see the kind of things. So it was a fallout and a pointer to the lack of absence of leadership in APGA that you saw. For instance, a party that has a governor, the governor should be able to, if he has critical leadership skills, to bring everybody on the table and make deals that each and every one of them will walk away from. But when you have people who don't want to talk to you, they just want to lord it over you. You saw the manner with which people were disqualified. You saw the manner with which government appointees were harassed and, forced literally to vote a particular way. So that shows me that these people are not leaders, or they are leaders in a 21st century operating a 19th century template. Because if they had done this years ago, when it was one man's word that reigns supreme, no problems. But when you have a time and a season where you have to share powers with people, you might have political power, the other guy has financial power. You might have political power, the other guy has control of the boys in the streets. So you must talk to the boys who has control of the boys in the streets. You must talk to the woman who has control of the women in the market. You must talk to the person who has control of the parks. You must talk to the person who has control of the churches. So power is shared. It might not be equal, but you also understand that people are critical stakeholders. When you are unable to bring these people to the table to present your ideas and have them present theirs, and you sit in your house and want to do what you want to do, it results in multiple factions like we've seen in APGA, it results in multiple factions like you've seen in PDP, it results in, and I pity the other party. What I see is that democracy is actually growing. Because in 1999 and in 2003, the kind of primaries or purported primaries that was done in APC could have passed, right? But we now live in a different era where people are saying we didn't see the ballot papers, we didn't see the voting materials, we didn't see the electoral officers, we were just staying in our places and we had results. 20 years ago, people don't have the technology to report that. Today, in the age of mobile phones, people can take pictures, people can take videos, and people can do that in real time. Therefore, those skills of staying in a hotel to write election results are not obtainable in effect. So I see people who have holding these skills, operating it in a modern, and that's why you see the friction. If this happened 20, 30 years ago, you won't see this friction. Unfortunately for them, for these people, their time is up. You have to get young people with progressive ideas who are in sync with current realities and demands of leadership. Whereas you demanded strongman leaders previously, today you have leaders who have empathy, who knows how to negotiate, who knows how to communicate their ideas, and who knows how to convince people to believe in their vision. That is what is hobblering these political parties today.
Now, do you think, or do you see this, confusion within these political parties, affecting the general election itself?
Yes, I see that. For instance, all of them are confused, and then, but again, I see that these political parties might have opened up windows for the Supreme Court to do what they wish with Anambra State. I've often complained that elections should not be decided by a 7-man panel of any court, no matter how highly placed that court is. Elections should be decided by a popular ballot of the people. But it seems that the way we are in Nigeria, that essentially or technically power has been taken away from the real people and has been placed in a 5-man panel, in a 7-man panel, depending on whether you're talking about appeal court or the Supreme Court. So what I see is that these kind of disagreements have opened up windows of opportunity for litigations, even pre-primary litigations or pre-election litigations, to get the way up to Supreme Court. And I'm praying that the fourth shall not be the first in Anambra.
No, I would like you to just have a critical look at this. Which of the parties do you think is better positioned to win the November 6th election?
It is open contest for all. For instance, a lot of people underestimate YPP. But you remember, YPP is not distracted by court injunctions, they are not distracted by all of these things. And while other aspirants were campaigning internally within their party to secure the nomination of the party, YPP, months away, have been doing campaigns as if they were preparing for. So that lead time they got in mobilization might count for something. Right? Then again, you talk about APGA. APGA has an incumbent governor. No matter how underperforming you might think he is still the executive governor. For instance, a lot of civil servants are beholden to him. For instance, a lot of church bodies are beholden to him. Because if you saw what happened just before the last elections, 2017 elections, you know there are churches there are hospitals that are being managed by churches. There are schools that are being managed by churches. And what happened is that the executive government opened up vaults of money and they released funds to those schools and they released funds to those churches. And you now saw donations to CWO, to the Anglican version of it, to bodies of night. And who has the power to make this kind of influence, financial influence? You see that the state government. So regardless of the crisis you see in APGA, it is foolhardy. Or I wouldn't use that word, but I would say anybody who wants to discountenance them has not done his analysis quite well. And then you talk about the APC. A lot of people say, oh no, APC doesn't like, no, I don't agree with that. Our people will not vote APC. I don't agree with that. Our people will vote APC because we've seen that APC came second in the last elections.
Yeah.
They came second. Not they came ahead of PDP in the last elections,
Yes.
right? And again, there is a politics of the church that is going on here. A lot of, almost all the aspirants of other major political parties came from the Roman Catholic Church. And you know, while I am not comfortable discussing this, people who are casting these votes are discussing these issues. And now it seems if what happened in APC stands, then that guy could be the lone guy from the Anglican Church. So you see, and again, remember that when APC did their revalidation exercise, or is it registration exercise, you saw the influx of a lot of people.
Yes.
Now they are targeting a particular specific group, rich people from the states who have business interests, who have maybe not much political interest, especially those rich people, and they have considerable influence in their domains, right? They lure them with contracts. Again, today you might have heard that Metawale has moved into APC. So this APC is serious. It's in a membership overdrive, right? So with that kind of efforts they are putting in membership overdrive, telling these rich Igbo boys or rich people around us to go and deliver their words, go and deliver your polling units, and in exchange we'll give you this or that. That again, so anybody who tells you that one or two parties is just a walkover for them has lied to you. And again, people are disenchanted with ABGA because of their poor performance. Again, people, and because of the way APC has mismanaged Nigeria's diversity, and because of the way they have mismanaged its economy. And what you saw is insecurity that has snowballed. Again, it has affected the fortunes of that party in Anambra State. So the other viable option you could say people are looking at is PDP. So, but again, PDP has a history. Remember, PDP has a history in Anambra State, which is not so salutary. So it is, I see it as open contest for all. That it will come down to the wire, and people who do enough mobilization, enough strategy, and enough counter strategy, and again, money will call, and people will answer. I'm sure you might have heard. I'm sure you might have heard the amount of money that was spent in trying to convince delegates to vote. So in 2017, we were in the field, money called, and people were willing to sell their votes for 1,000, 5,000. Today, I am expecting that people will sell their votes as much as 20,000 naira. And desperate politicians will bring that money and they will buy the votes. So if it comes to exchange of votes, then it will now be. So a lot of factors, but all of the four dominant political parties, they don't have equal chances, but they all have chances of going at it.
Mr. Chima, I'd like to thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. And then I hope to be invited one, and sooner than later.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for the good work you do. Sir.
Thank you for listening. Bye for now. Are we done? Now you can.